If you're thinking about converting everything to a Roth IRA, don't. In this video, I'm going to reveal why having everything in a Roth is actually a terrible tax strategy and why it will cost you thousands of dollars in retirement. And be sure to stay to the end because I'll walk through a few different real life scenarios to help everything make a little bit more sense. But before we jump in, my name is Jacob Duke. I'm a certified financial planner and the owner of a retirement planning firm where we help people just like you plan smarter and retire better. And every time that I meet a new client, one of the first questions that they ask is, should we be doing Roth conversions? And while there are definitely many benefits to doing Roth conversions, converting everything to a Roth is a mistake because what you're going to end up doing is wasting your standard deduction for years to come. And in fact, here in 2025, the standard deduction for single filers is $15,750. And if you're 65 or older, you could get an additional $2,000 on top of that and possibly an additional $6,000 on top of that, depending on your income under the new One Big Beautiful Bill. And for married filing jointly folks, your standard deduction here in 2025 is $31,500. And you, if you're both over 65, get an additional $3,200 total, $1,600 per person, and possibly $12,000 in extra deductions if you're above 65, if your income is low enough. So if you're married filing jointly and you're less than 65, you can have up to $31,500 of income without paying any taxes because you will be covered by your standard deduction. This is what I call the 0% tax bracket, and it's wise to use this every single year, no matter what. And as a retiree, you can fill the standard deduction with a variety of different types of income, whether it be part-time work, IRA distributions, Roth conversions, dividends and interest, Social Security income perhaps, and so on. The key here is that you need some sort of taxable income to be able to use your standard deduction effectively. And this is where my problem with Roth IRAs comes into play. If you put a plan together to get all of your tax-deferred IRA dollars converted over to a Roth IRA in just a few years, you will end up with no taxable sources of income outside of Social Security and maybe some interest on your cash, which essentially is going to waste your standard deduction because if Social Security is your only form of income, none of it's going to end up being taxable. Now, I want to be clear on this. Doing Roth conversions, it might end up being a good tax strategy, absolutely. But converting everything to Roth is not a good idea. So let's walk through an example together to help things make more sense. All right, so first let's outline the scenario. Let's assume that we are married, filing jointly, and that we're both 73. Okay, so we're at RMD age. 2025 this year is our first year of RMDs. So that's that we're married, both 73. Our standard deduction in that scenario would be $31,500. You can see that here. And then also, since we're over 65, we would get the $3,200 extra on top of that for the couple in total. And then not yet anyway, I'm not including the $6,000 extra deduction per person under the Big Beautiful Bill because that is temporary. It's only for the next 4 years. So I'm just going to leave that off for now. If we need to add it in for another part of the example, we definitely can. So the first thing I want to prove to you is that Social Security, if that's your only form of income, is completely tax-free. So what I'm going to do is we're going to assume that we've got $90,000 of total income. We've got $70,000 here from Social Security and then another $20,000 being the first year of RMD. Okay. So first, before we factor in that RMD at all, let's look at the Social Security. I've done videos on this. I'm not going to explain it, in depth, but I just want to run through this really quickly with you. You can go watch the other videos if you'd like. So the first thing we have to do is find the provisional income. If Social Security is our only form of income, meaning we leave out the RMD for now and assume we don't have that, what we would do is take half of the Social Security amount, that would equal $35,000. And assuming no other income, assuming again, no interest, we would just take that $35,000 and run it through the provisional income tax brackets. And you can see those here on screen. The first $32,000 of your provisional income as a married filing jointly couple, that is not subject to taxation at all. And what we're doing by running these through these brackets is actually trying to figure out how much of the Social Security amount that we're getting is actually subject to taxation. That leaves $3,000 left over. So that right there, none of that is subject to taxation. The next 12, so 32 to 44, whatever falls in that range, half of that amount is actually subject to taxation. So what we would actually do here is say 50% of $3,000 equals $1,500. Okay. So in this scenario, if the only form of income, no interest, I know this is hypothetical, but no interest, no IRA distributions, no earned income is Social Security, which honestly, this happens sometimes for retirees. Probably a decent percentage of them, 30 or 40% end up with only Social Security being the form of income they have. $1,500 out of the 70 is actually what's subject to taxation. Okay, so they got $70,000, $1,500 is subject to taxation, and when you take that $1,500, you apply that against your standard deduction of what is that, $34,700 total for being over 65, not even including the extra 12 that they could get under the big beautiful bill. That's obviously $1,500 is a lot less than that much money. So their standard deduction more than covers how much taxable Social Security they have. So the first point I want to make here, if Social Security is your only form of income, again, none of it is going to end up being taxed. Doesn't mean it's not subject to taxation. It just means that it won't actually be taxed at 10 or 12%. It would be at the standard deduction rate of 0%. Now, that assumes that they only have Social Security, but they could have $1 million or $3 million Roth IRA because maybe they did conversions early on. So the first point is, if you don't have any tax-deferred money, you're leaving a lot of money on the table with that standard deduction. You're leaving, $33,000 of room on the table there of standard deduction opportunity you could have taken by having an RMD or having an IRA to take money from or having earned income that you otherwise aren't using up. Now, as you add more income to your picture here, more of your Social Security will be taxable, absolutely. So you kind of have to back into how much income you can have and still have no taxes to pay on the income or the Social Security itself, which let's do that now. So if we look at this, now we say, let's actually apply this $20,000 RMD. Remember, our husband and wife here, we're both 73, 2025, it's our first year of RMDs. Now we know we're going to add in that $20,000. So they're going to get $70,000 of Social Security benefits combined still, but now we're going to add in that $20,000 RMD. Okay. So we have to do the same calculation to figure out how much of their benefits are subject to taxation. So we got to find the provisional income. The way we do that is we take half of the Social Security amount, which is $35,000. We then add in any other forms of income. We're going to add in the $20,000 from their RMD. That equals $55,000 total. Okay, so what we do now is we say the provisional income brackets, again, $0 to $32,000 bracket, that is at 0%. So we subtract out the first $32,000. That is all at 0%. And then we got, what do we have left over? 23. And we subtract out the next 12. So 32 to 44, the next 12,000 is actually subtracted out there, which leaves $11,000 left over. Again, half of that amount. And then the next bracket, anything from 44 or higher, 85% of that amount is subject to taxation. So I'm going to do a little bit of quick math here. 0.85 times 11000, $11,000 equals 9350. All right, so that is how much of this bracket is subject to taxation. And then we know that half of 12,000 is 6,000. So we add 6,000 to that equals 15,350. Okay, so $15,350. That is how much of our $70,000 of Social Security is actually subject to taxation. So we got $70,000, but we're only going to pay tax, or only $15,350 is actually subject to taxation. So we take that number, that is our taxable amount of Social Security. We then add that to our $20,000, so plus $20,000 of IRA distribution. Now we're actually figuring out what our total AGI or taxable income would be here. So that equals $35,350. Okay, so that is our total income that's going to be taxed before even subtracting out the standard deduction. That's our AGI. If we subtract out the standard deduction of 34,700, it's not exactly perfect, but what that leaves us with is $650 of taxable income after we take out the standard deduction. So what we've done there, it's not exactly perfect, just so you know. I just did the math on it for the first time. I realized that it's not perfect. If we want to do that, we'd have an RMD of $19,000. That'd probably get us all the way down to where this number here would actually be 0. So if we had $19,000 RMD, it actually would maybe work out towards 0. But the point of showing you this is they got $90,000, okay? They got $90,000 between their RMD, their required distribution, and their Social Security of $70,000, and they're only going to pay tax on $650. So 10% on $650, what is that, $65 or something like that? So that is a very low tax rate, $65 on $90,000. That's 0.5%, if even that. It's very, very, very low. So the point of showing you this is if you to wrap this like all back up to the front and saying why Roth conversions all the way down to 0 and having no money in a tax deferred account and converting everything into Roth is a bad idea, because if you didn't have this $20,000 either via distribution out of your IRA, earned income, or interest or dividends or something, if you didn't have that there, you would be wasting this full standard deduction of $34,700. Again, this doesn't even include this year in 2025 having the extra $12,000 per person. So we could actually increase that RMD even more, at least for now. Again, I'm not using that because that's not permanent, at least yet. It's only available for the next 4 years. But the point of showing you this is if we could, what we could do here is if an RMD, the first year RMD is about 4% or so, if you do the math on that, it's about a $500,000 IRA balance. So if you're trying to convert down to less money than that or all the way to zero, you don't need to, because again, this money is essentially tax-free. That $20,000 is tax-free out of the IRA. So you got a tax deduction on the front end. The money grows tax deferred while you're working, whenever you're working and it's growing. And you also get to take it out at RMD age tax-free as well. Okay, so you got triple tax advantage, much like an HSA. We talk about that a lot, but people don't think about your IRA or your tax-deferred 401k, those tax-deferred accounts being triple tax advantage potentially as well too, based on these higher standard deduction amounts. So if you had converted that $20,000 in your 60s or early in retirement, you might have paid 10 or 12 or 22% on that conversion when you did it, thinking you were doing something good, but you did that and paid extra taxes on money that you never would have had to pay taxes on in the first place. So I hope that this shows you that whenever you're doing Roth conversions, you have to be very thoughtful about what you're trying to accomplish. Is it to eliminate taxes entirely? Is it to try to create tax-free income for yourself? Is it to avoid the widow's tax trap? Is it to leave a better inheritance or tax-free inheritance for your heirs one day? What is the mission? What is the goal? And then from there, say, am I actually paying extra taxes beyond what I ever would have needed to pay by doing these conversions? And what is the target amount of money I actually want to have at RMD age when I get there in my tax deferred accounts? Maybe $1 million is too much, but $500,000 in this example is not too much to have in a tax deferred account and still pay no taxes on the RMD. So thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down below. We'll see you in the next video.